Coming up, the ASEAN Regional Forum has wrapped up, but thorny issues continue to create diplomatic tensions in the region, with North Korea's top diplomat threatening the regime could conduct yet another nuclear test depending on the U.S.'s attitude. The South Korean government asks its citizens to pay special attention to their safety when they travel to northeastern provinces in China amid signs of possible threats of attacks by North Korea. And another terror attack by Islamic State militants. France was targeted again when two men killed an elderly priest at a Catholic church in Normandy. Stay tuned for these stories and more. It's 6 a.m. on Wednesday, July 27th. Here in Seoul, welcome to our newscast. I'm Hwang Jae. Thank you for joining us. The ASEAN Regional Forum came to an end in the Laotian capital last night, while South Korea has once again urged North Korea to give up its nuclear ambitions. Pyongyang has blamed the U.S., saying that its decision to carry out a fifth nuclear test will depend on Washington's attitude. Kwon So-hwa has the latest from the Laotian capital.
The key issue for South Korea at the 23rd round of the ASEAN Regional Forum was North Korea and its nuclear and missile threats. As all 27 members make statements on their regional issues, South Korea's top diplomat Yoon Byung-se gave a strong message on the North's continuous violations when it was his turn to speak at the ARF.
I explained to many colleagues before and during the meeting the severity of North Korea's nuclear issue and asked for them to make statements on the strict implementation of the UN Security Council resolution. Most ministers have actively shown cooperation on that request.
North Korea's top diplomat Lee Yong-ho, for whom the ARF was the first appearance at an international event, has defended Pyongyang's nuclear development and also held a press briefing after the meeting. He explained North Korea's presence at the ARF, saying current tensions could seriously escalate, referring to the international community's response to its nuclear tests, including the unprecedented strong sanctions from the UN Security Council. Lee said everyone is doing nuclear tests, claiming he doesn't understand why only the North's nuclear ambitions are deemed as a threat. When asked by reporters about another nuclear test, he said that depends on the U.S.'s attitude. On the resumption of the stalled six-party denuclearization talks, Lee said that's disappeared into thin air, again blaming the U.S. However, officials here say the North's rhetoric in the statement was nothing new. Attention is on a joint statement to be issued by the host country Laos, but it won't be all smooth sailing as member nations have conflicting views on different matters, especially the South China Sea dispute and the deployment of the U.S. missile defense system THAAD. The statement may need days or even a week to be issued, according to officials. With the South China Sea, THAAD, and the North Korea issue all diplomatically correlated, there are concerns that the results of this year's ARF may have only underscored the ongoing tensions in the region. Kwon So-hwa, Arirang News, Vientiane.
And after that apparent threat from Pyongyang's top diplomat, the United States has urged North Korea to refrain from rhetoric and actions that destabilize Northeast Asia. Katina Adams, a spokeswoman for the U.S. State Department's East Asia and Pacific Affairs Bureau, told Seoul-based Yonhap News on Tuesday that North Korea should instead focus on taking concrete steps towards fulfilling its international obligations. Meanwhile, South Korea's Deputy National Security Advisor Cho Tae-yong has arrived in Washington for talks with the U.S. officials on pressuring North Korea over its weapons programs. He said despite the North's desire to frame it otherwise, it is an issue between the entire international community and North Korea, not a matter between the U.S. and the North. Kim Jong-un has reportedly sent over 10 terror groups to China and Southeast Asian countries. The motive is to exact vengeance against South Korea after a number of North Koreans working overseas defected to the South. South Korean authorities are set to heighten security for local residents. Oh Jung-hee reports.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un dispatched over 10 terror groups to China and Southeast Asian countries for terror against South Koreans there, according to sources familiar with the North on Tuesday. The North Korean regime has been encouraging retaliation against South Koreans visiting these countries after 13 of its workers in a Pyongyang-run restaurant in China escaped and defected to South Korea about 3 months ago. North Korean authorities are set to have assigned these terror groups to specific targets, such as South Korean diplomatic offices and associations, and order them to immediately carry out, quote, a revenge 100 and 1,000 times larger when commanded. To show loyalty, the terror groups are reportedly seeking to attack South Korean nationals or kidnap them in places like Cambodia or Laos. The sources claim that these terror groups authored the murder of a South Korean Chinese pastor in China late April. In regards to these possible threats, the South Korean Foreign Ministry announced that it'll keep close tabs on latest developments and ensure the safety of South Korean residents overseas.
The ministry recently requested diplomatic offices in concerned areas to limit contact with North Koreans and keep close contact with local security authorities. Safety meetings will be held with missionaries, correspondents and defector-turned South Koreans as they are most likely to be attacked.
South Korean residents in Beijing were told to avoid visiting places near the border with North Korea, especially northeastern Chinese provinces such as Liaoning, Jilin, and Heilongjiang. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
The Korean government has submitted its proposal for a nearly $9.7 billion budget supplement to the National Assembly, but fierce debates over the plan are expected. Our Kim Young-gil has a preview of the brewing dispute at the parliament.
The National Assembly is set to begin deliberations on the government's $9.6 billion extra budget bill. The government and the ruling Saenuri Party say the fiscal spending package is aimed at propping up the economy, easing the fallout from the ongoing corporate restructuring drive and boosting job creation. The government hopes the parliament will pass the bill in early August so that it can begin spending the funds before September. Yet the deliberation process could be extended as the opposition parties are critical of the way the government has allocated the funds.
The supplementary budget was devised to support the restructuring of the ailing shipbuilding industries. We must not forget how poorly the shipbuilding companies have handled the economic uncertainties. We will undertake a thorough review of how the money will be used.
The minor opposition People's Party said the government pushed for the additional budget without a clear, well-considered spending plan.
Whenever there have been economic difficulties, the government and the ruling party have submitted extra budget bills. That's done nothing to help the economy. Instead, it's pulled the growth rate down.
The opposition parties want the bill to include spending for a free child care program for children between ages 3 and 5. Prime Minister Hwang Kyo-won will deliver an administrative policy speech on the matter on Wednesday to lay out the details of the proposal. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
The Big Mac Index is an informal guide published by The Economist to measure purchasing power among different countries. The latest version shows theoretically that Koreans have more purchasing power as the won closed stronger against the greenback. Lee Ji-won points out where we rank according to that measurement.
The Big Mac, the iconic burger sold at McDonald's restaurants, has become more affordable in Korea, at least in theory, according to the latest Big Mac Index published by The Economist on Tuesday. The Big Mac Index is an informal way of measuring the purchasing power parity of countries by comparing a country's currency to the US dollar and the price of a Big Mac in that country. The lower index a country has, the more its currency is undervalued. And the latest results show that Korea's Big Mac index stood at 3.59 earlier this year, compared to the current 3.86, meaning the Korean won has become less undervalued. This is an increase in Korea's rank from 24 to 23, showing that the gap between currency in Big Mac and actual currency have narrowed. This also means, theoretically, that purchasing power has increased in Korea. Based on the index, Korea now has the second most expensive Big Mac in Asia after Singapore. However, the Korean won is still undervalued by 23.5%. The index for the second half of 2016 was based on the exchange rate of 1,141 against $1. But according to the Big Mac index, it should be right for $1 to cost 873 won. China and Japan have also seen a decrease in their undervaluation of currencies as the Chinese yuan and Japanese yen have become stronger against the greenback in the first half of the year. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
An 84-year-old priest was killed and 4 people taken hostage when 2 knife-wielding men attacked a Catholic church in France. The attack, which took place Tuesday in a suburb northwest of Paris, happened when the 2 men interrupted a morning mass, forced the priest to his knees, and slit his throat. Police shot and killed both attackers as they emerged from the building, freeing 3 of the hostages, one of whom is seriously wounded. President Francois Hollande, who went to the scene, called it a dreadful terrorist attack, adding that the attackers had pledged allegiance to the Islamic State. Let's take a listen to what he said.
In the face of this threat that has never been greater in France and Europe, the government is absolutely determined to defeat terrorism.
In July 1953, an armistice agreement was signed by the 2 Koreas, meaning the war that divided a nation is not over until a final peace agreement is inked. More than 6 decades later, all we have instead is the most heavily militarized border in the world. Moon Kwon-young takes you inside South Korea's DMZ and over the line into North Korea.
Camp Boniface. This is where the Republic of Korea and the U.S. JSA battalions jointly serve under the United Nations command flag, face to face with North Korea. The opening salvo in the Cold War, the Korean War was fought from 1950 until 1953, when the Armistice ended open warfare, but the war has unofficially been on for more than 6 decades now. Unlike threats from Iran or a serious civil war, the Korean situation has been unresolved for 63 years. Its most recognized flashpoint right here, Panmunjom. This is the joint security area along the Korean border. We're walking towards the line that divides the 2 Koreas. I have to actually walk this way because we can't shoot right, we can't shoot left, we can only shoot forward. There are a lot of restrictions on our cameras. Now, this is the Blue Room, which is a focal point of the JSA, and we'll be walking inside the room. The focal point of the JSA, the UN Military Armistice Commission's Conference Room T2. It is here that a ceasefire was negotiated after the Korean War. In fact, it's still used for negotiations.
The microphones on the table are monitored and recorded 24 hours a day. They also represent the military demarcation line, which is further extended to my left and to my right by the concrete steps outside this building.
On July 27, 1953, the Korean Armistice Agreement was signed, in practice ending the bloody 3-year Korean War, until a final peace agreement could be found. No final peace deal has been achieved yet. North Korean and South Korean soldiers stand here every single day and stare at each other, both sides constantly watching every move the other makes. This border is armed to the teeth. Amidst the minefields is a bridge. North Korea is on the other side. This was the site of the prisoner exchange that followed the armistice. Once a prisoner crossed the bridge, his fate was sealed forever, hence the name Bridge of No Return. 63 years after the ceasefire, Here, the Korean DMZ remains the safest yet the most dangerous battlefield in the world. Moon Gon-young, Arirang News, on the DMZ between North and South Korea.
Korean Olympic delegations are off to take part in the 31st Summer Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro. It's a grueling 24-and-a-half-hour journey for the 159 athletes. Officials and some members of the press stopping over in Dubai to land in Rio on Wednesday afternoon local time. Once in Brazil, they will not be stopped by the media for any type of interview due to security concerns in the area. On Tuesday morning, Korea's Prime Minister Hwang Kyo-ahn sent a message to athletes during a cabinet meeting saying that he hopes Team Korea will help bring the nation together and instill a greater sense of pride for the people while urging related ministries to put the security and safety of the Korean athletes and staff first. And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thanks for watching. I'm Hwang Jae. We will be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Goodbye for now.